Howdy, guys, gals, and non binary pals. This is the Tales from the Waystone Summer Reading Program.
We're your hosts, Will and Phoenix. Let's get into it.
Welcome to the sixth installment of our series on Travis Baldree's Bookshops and Bonedust, Great Strides in Bookselling, where we'll be reading chapters 31 through 36.
So, short explanation of the pod for those of you who are new here. Each week we'll be examining a section of Bookshops and Bonedust and figuring out what we can take from the text to apply to our real lives. We will also take some time to focus on something we have learned this week, and then we will share a recommended thing of the week. Before all of that, we will probably have already given you our notable quotable from the book that made us smile or think or laugh. Before we begin, let's get some disclaimers out of the way. First of all, we are in no way affiliated with Travis Baldree or his publisher or books. Second of all, our discussions naturally assume that you have read through chapter
36.
36. Not what's written here, but cool. Of Bookshops and Bonedust. If you haven't, go read it and come back, and then yeah. Okay. Either you've read it or you don't care about spoilers. Also, a word to our community, please be kind to yourselves, one another, and the creators of the worlds that we love exploring.
All right. So this section starts off with a passage from a book that sounds a lot like a high fantasy Wuthering Heights. Two lovers staring across windy plains and moors, a lot of that stuff.
Except not windy plains and moors, across the sea.
And then Viv falls asleep.
We've had this discussion even today. We were at a Barnes & Noble and saw a paperback copy of The Stand, and my instinct is do not fall asleep while reading that. It will break your nose.
There are some things where book stands become a really good idea.
Or only reading when you know that you will be awake. Or it's in your lap. Anyway, Viv drops off to sleep and then has a rather disturbing dream.
The big important things out of this dream are that 1, Vereen the Pale knows who Viv is.
And 2, Viv finds out the name of her new greatsword, new to her, greatsword, Blackblood.
As suspected, yes, this is the same sword that Viv uses throughout Legends and Lattes.
Well, it's a good thing that Satchel's actually there in her room, probably, because she starts awake, she needs company, she needs to have confirmation that her dream was not just a dream and it was real. And the suspicious part of me is like kind of trying to be like, Viv, don't tell Satchel literally everything. So of course she tells Satchel like everything, including that Rackham is going to be chasing down Vereen, and that might be like a pincer movement of Vereen coming to Merc to confront Viv and Rackham being behind her and, catching her in between two foes and hopefully removing her from this plane of existence.
I kind of have a couple thoughts about that. So Satchel is in many ways an embodiment of the ethos that gets us through Legends and Lattes, which is things don't have to be what they start out as. Satchel is accurate in his assessment of his trustworthiness. He does not lie about what his constraints are. Like, he is very upfront about the things that he is compelled to do for Vereen. And I think he is also very upfront that if given his druthers, he does not want to do that. He wants to have his own agency. One of the things that he's experiencing during his time with Viv and Fern and the others is people who see him as a full being in his own right with wants and desires and needs that don't have to do with fulfilling an obligation to someone else. Like, Fern tells him up front that it is good for him to spend time just reading and relaxing, doing things that bring him pleasure. And he's never had that before. In many ways, Satchel's sort of like someone who is getting out of an abusive relationship. And really, if we think about it, it literally is an abusive relationship with Vereen, where she dominates what he's allowed to do, what he's allowed to say. She mistreats him. She orders him around and is horribly controlling. And for the first time after effectively being freed from all of that, he can now think about what he actually wants. What are the things that he truly appreciates in life? He was created literally to be a unthinking servant, but that's not who he is. It may have been what he started out as, but he's far from that.
So to bring that to like a more example from at least my life, I enjoy building things, especially like Lego or like little building kits or things that I can do with my fingers and my hands. It's more about the process than it is about the finished object in general, like almost always. Yeah, the finished object is cool, but I like the wonder and the experience of making. But I have also experienced being told that my love of Lego, love of toys, love of plushie, whatever, makes me seem childish and that I shouldn't be like that. And that was in my 20s. Like, the person I was with was the antithesis, like telling me not to be me. He was telling me that it was not okay to have like boots with a chunky heel in the early 2000s. Or, he was trying to control how adult I seemed. And he was embarrassed by me when I wasn't as adult as he wanted me to be. And he considered being an adult fan of Lego to be something that you couldn't possibly, like, that's not okay. That's childish and stupid. And so I didn't get to enjoy that. I didn't get to enjoy making and tinkering. And I mean, he didn't encourage any of my creative pursuits. In fact, he tried to squash so many of them. So I have the first thing I drew after I left his ass
Left his ash.
tattooed on my shoulder. It's a phoenix. Part of why I choose to go by Phoenix, because I had to rediscover a lot about who I am, what my likes are, what things bring me joy and pleasure. And it's a shame that that ever has to happen with anyone, that anyone ever has to go through that.
I think there's another thing here too. Like, there is the you that you are, and there's the you that other people have told you that you are. So, like in the book here, Satchel has been told he's one thing for his entire existence.
Or at least that he can remember.
Right. For as long as he can remember, he's been told that he's one thing. And, he's been terrorized anytime he's deviated from that. And now he's actually finding himself, literally, full stop, finding himself. And he's actually surrounded by people who are giving him the space to really explore what that is. And I think while he has compelled loyalty to Vereen in the sense that magical wards basically require him to follow her commands, the bonds of loyalty that he feels to Fern and Viv and Galena and Maylee is a lot stronger. Like, he'll do anything in his power for them, not because he's bound to, but because they respect him as a person, and they nurture him and celebrate who he is and celebrate his becoming without judgment. So I think that's kind of cool.
On to the next chapter.
So after having this little heart to heart with Satchel, Viv brings the gang up to the graveyard for a picnic. This is really kind of her temporary found family. It's her, it's Fern, it's Maylee, it's Galena, it's Satchel. These are her close circle here in Merc. These are the people who are her close confidants, the people that she trusts, and maybe even loves. So they're all struggling with stuff right now. So Viv is struggling with her fear over the coming of Vereen. She knows that that's on its way. She doesn't know how long it'll take, but it's pretty much inevitable. She's also anxious about her relationship with Maylee. She knows that there's a clock, and it feels wrong to be excited for the thing that will herald the end of it. And also, she feels guilty, I think.
I don't think she's excited. I think she's just anticipating.
I think that's a better word, yes. But she's preparing for it. And that anticipation and excitement are similar enough on the outside, even though there's a different internal motivator. Makes it harder for her to really appreciate the time that she and Maylee have together.
Both she and Maylee have made the choice at this point to put that aside, compartmentalize. By the end of that night, they've decided to stop talking about the end because, as Maylee has put it, it's a waste of hours. Before, well, instigating them leaving this spot that is eerie, but also kind of lovely, and this camaraderie that kind of reminds me of at least the movie version of Stand By Me. So it's kind of that, again, that found family that, we're going to sit around a campfire and eat and drink and tell stories and tell truths. Satchel goes and meanders through the graveyard. And then he comes back and says, Viv, I need you to see something. There is a sigil, kind of with burned ash, like glittery, amongst the graves.
It's Varine's. And yeah, if there's any question where Satchel's true loyalty lies, it's with this. If he was truly loyal to Varine, he wouldn't have pointed this out to Viv at all. He would have let them all carry on blissfully ignorant. I think he knows that, Varine is coming, and while he is afraid, he's also, for the first time, I think, got some hope that maybe it doesn't have to be that way. It doesn't have to end the way he fears. A large part of that is because of this found family group that he's found himself with.
In addition to the little conversation that Maylee and Viv have, the other thing that we find out after the group has descended from the perch where that graveyard is that there is a note kind of shoved in the door for the bookshop. And finally, Fern's shipment has arrived and will be delivered the next day.
Oh, the joy of a long-awaited package, right?
Yeah. I mean, I've definitely had ones where I've watched the tracking go, okay, where is it? Where is it? I want it. I want it. And then sometimes it randomly goes from the nearest city to the middle of the country.
How long is it going to be sitting in the city of industry? It doesn't take that long, does it?
Well, that too. But like, I have watched the tracking go, but why is it going there?
Yeah, someone screwed up in the postal system.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there is the delayed delivery when you weren't there to take the package.
I think everyone can understand that frustration. Here's to hoping that all of your packages are delivered in a reasonable time frame without any requirement for you to go to the post office. That is my blessing upon every single listener. But to continue on with the book, the next day, Pitts comes by, delivers some rather large crates full of books. And I don't know about you, I was half expecting there to be people.
I mean, they're heavy enough.
Yeah, but also books are just heavy.
Every time we've moved, our book boxes are consistently the heaviest ones that we have. I've known this for 25 years that I've been moving house consistently.
Yeah, I used to have a lot more books than I do now, but you can always tell a book box. Generally, they're the ones with the ripped handles.
Yeah.
But also, seriously, don't fill your book boxes like to the brim. Try to find other things that can go in the book boxes. Like, I have a lot of lighter things. I have stuffed animals. I
Yeah, throw in some lighter things as well on top. That way the space is still getting used, but your back will thank you.
yeah. Anyway,
So as they start unloading the books and putting them on the shelf and organizing them, all of that hard work that they'd put in before to paint everything, to clean everything up, is starting to bear fruit. It's starting to look like it's put together. It's starting to look like an actual bookshop. And at the same time, Fern is starting to catastrophize a little bit.
Fern does this as a person with a rather insidious anxiety disorder. I can recognize my people. And Fern is definitely like, she'll go along for a little while and feel okay and everything will be fine for a little while. And, things just go along and truck along the way that it's supposed to. And then all of a sudden she comes across one thing that just kind of tips her over the edge and she starts fretting and having doubts. And so the solution at this point is actually to go be a little bit ballsy and for the grand reopening of the shop, get a local author to make an appearance.
I mean, we know that Zelia Greatstrider is a local. So with nothing more than a little bit of gumption and a package of sweets from the Seasong Bakery, Viv and Fern head up to the Great Strider Estate.
Real quick, though, there are a couple of pieces that we didn't talk about that I do want to kind of get your thoughts on.
Okay.
At one point, Viv is like, pretty soon I'm not going to be here. And Fern tries to shrug it off and says, yeah, we've gone to all this trouble, so why not make it a place that people want to stay? However we can. However I can. She's lonely. She was much lonelier before Viv showed up. She's already anticipating, like, it's anticipatory grief at the loss of her friend.
Mm-hmm.
But that switch from we to I stung Viv, like, more than she thought it would. Like, she's over here trying to prepare her friends for her departure, and she's not really processing her own departure herself.
Yeah, she's kind of taken it for granted that, oh yeah, Ragham's going to come back. I'll go with him. Bob's your uncle. And she hasn't really thought about what that's going to mean for the attachments that she's formed.
Right, how she's going to handle it.
You know, it makes sense. This is young Viv. She's learning a lot of this stuff the hard way, as I think a lot of us do. Thinking back to our teens and 20s, you know, you get into a groove, you find your people.
Like college. And it's this loving bond for 4 years.
Yep.
And then you graduate. And it's sometimes those strong bonds don't stick. They don't survive the departures.
They don't survive the pressures of adulthood, of responsibility. Other times they just kind of get put into stasis to be, you know, rekindled the moment things thaw out. And it can be difficult. You know, it's not always easy to put things away. Like, it's why graduations are always so bittersweet. You spend 4 years putting in all this work and you make all these friends, and you know that there is a good chunk of them that you may never see again after that, as people move away and start new jobs, you know, start new lives. And if you ever see them again, they may be different people entirely than the ones you left. I think Viv is only just now kind of processing that, just recognizing that this chapter in her life is not infinite. Now is not infinite ever, even though it always seems like the most pressing thing in our lives.
Now, kind of break in the angst spiral almost. Viv and Fern go off to try to recruit Zelia, try to recruit their local author to make the appearance. And Fern is over here, and I so sympathize with her, trying to make the best impression, but she's making herself small to do it. She is trying to also make Viv make herself small to do it, fretting about how they're going to come across if they're too strongly opinionated, if they're too out there, if they're too big, if they're too wild, if they're too anything. So her way of handling that is to make sure that they take up a smaller footprint. And that's not Viv's style. That's not even like a thing that Viv can guarantee will happen, even if she's trying. She's going to make the big swings.
This whole thing is a bold maneuver to begin with, right?
Yeah.
Like, so lean into that boldness.
Exactly. And I feel for Fern because I'm super like that.
So when they get to the estate, they're met by a guy, not Zelia.
Not even like, are you writing under her name?
No, he's just a guy who apparently helps out around the place.
And Viv needs to knock off the whole, I wonder what those two are doing.
She manages to restrain that line of questioning, though.
For now.
Through this visit, anyway.
The details aren't really important. What is important is that they do, by the fact that Viv is kind of bold and puts herself out there, they do recruit Zelia to come to the bookshop for the grand reopening.
Turns out that Zelia herself appreciates a bit of boldness and is someone who is looking for adventures.
Also, bringing pastries from the Seasong Bakery has helped grease the wheels.
Yeah, I mean, I gotta say that if you are going to ask somebody to do something, it never hurts to bring good food. At work, there is sort of a running gag that if you want to ensure attendance for a meeting, offer free lunch.
I mean, it doesn't even have to be a good free lunch. It just needs to be food.
But if it's good, it really goes a long way.
That's true. All right. So our last chapter concerns the grand reopening. Turns out Satchel has some typography skills that nobody knew he had. Like, have you ever seen those videos that are kind of mesmerizing where you see someone doing hand calligraphy?
Oh, yeah. It's
And
really satisfying.
it really is. The way that sometimes they'll do it where they just make what looks like random lines on the paper until it all of a sudden creates words. That's kind of what Satchel does. So he makes the, like, what is it called? The
It's a sandwich board, I think.
sandwich board. Okay, we'll call it sandwich board. And, Fern and Viv go off and put up notices everywhere, and including the bakery, including near to where Iridia works and where Hylark's office is, and all these other things. Like, they just put them all over the town of Merc. And the hope is that because they're also doing this grand reopening on a day that there is a boat coming back, that they'll just have a steady flow of customers. And as it turns out, they run out of Zelia's books. And I don't know how to feel about it, but eventually customers start getting her to sign other people's books.
Here's how I feel about this, right? So, for a lot of these people, even though Zelia is a local, she doesn't go out much. And I think she's kind of been looking for an excuse to get out and maybe be more part of the community. So, for many of these people, this is the sort of encounter that they'll tell their friends, their children, their grandchildren about. And so, it's less about this is a book by Zelia Greatstrider that she signed, as it is, this is a memento of this time I got to meet Zelia Greatstrider.
One thing I'd like to point out, I know it's one of those things where people are like, but this is this great person who I adore and admire from afar. And it's really cool to, like, I'm so nervous and I don't know what to do or how to act or how to whatever. I want her to like me. Da, 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 da. And then they work themselves into a tizzy. The thing about it is that famous people, especially people who are not like uber rich famous people, but like still down to earth and well known in the community kind of famous person, they're people. They aren't going to be like so warped from our reality that they can't still have their own personhood, I guess. So like I was watching through campaign 2 of Critical Role, so Mighty Nine's campaign. And it was at the time when they were doing their Kickstarter to launch The Legend of Vox Machina. And Joel from MST3K was there, and these people who I would be starstruck to meet were starstruck to meet him. And it humanized them so much. They're like, he's an idol. He's somebody that I look up to. He's somebody that I've grew up watching. This is so surreal. I want to introduce myself, and I'm so nervous.
Yeah, like meeting someone who's famous is always a little weird because intrinsically there's an imbalance in knowledge. I know more about them than they probably will ever know about me because that information is publicly available. Like, not even in I did a whole bunch of creepy research or whatever. It's, no, I read an interview that you did. Like,
There is a difference between just stalker behavior and general knowledge because you've given interviews and things that are supposed to be watched by people. So, like, I think the closest recent celebrity that I've gone to go see a talk by was when Paul Reed Smith was at our local guitar store and Miles Kennedy was there from Alter Bridge. And like Miles seems like a normal person. I mean, he's a musician. He seemed like a musician, but like not somebody who was, so far up their butt that they couldn't actually relate to actual humans. And there were people that were very, very starstruck and very much in awe and everything. I have an interesting view of that now because I did go to college where a bunch of people who made some very famous games that I've loved were teachers. And I got to have lovely relationships with all of them who they're all really awesome just people. And yeah, they have these amazing skills and they're kind of, if you go looking on the credits of certain games, they're like, oh my gosh, you made that. And you can be in awe of them and starstruck a little bit. But getting to know them and their people, they might be people who are inundated with a whole bunch of others who want to get to know who they are or talk to them or, sometimes you have to do the gracious thing of step away while another person's like, I need to talk to this person, and you give that space. But that just seems like a different facet of their life rather than them being like self-important or what have you.
Yeah, I think Zelia does a pretty good job of handling all of this. She's gracious and she's kind to the people who come up to her. She doesn't make fun of them or belittle them or behave in a standoffish fashion. She is genuinely warm and welcoming to them. And also, I think starts to feel like maybe she should be coming out of her shell a little bit more too.
Yeah.
This is someone who's been kind of secluding herself in her estate. And, it's a testament that she decides to put herself out there and maybe get a little bit more integrated into her community. Because one thing we discover is that she and Fern have a lot in common. They both surround themselves with stacks of books. They have giant to be read piles and they're both people who take pleasure in reading and both find value in sharing stories with other people. And, there's a sense of kinship there that maybe she didn't realize would be there.
Which she?
Either. Take your pick. Like this little unassuming mouse bookseller and this larger than life elven author turns out have a lot in common.
I don't know about you, but at the end of that whole section, and we get to when Fern allows herself a rest at the end of the day, I felt the energy shift from having to be on to just off.
She's exhausted.
Yeah, but that happy exhausted.
It's the satisfaction you get after having done something worthwhile and to be really pleased with the results. And you're just like, okay, I can turn off. I can just relax and know that everything I did was worth it.
Mei Lee comes by. There's a little more privacy. They let Satchel out of the box. Viv mentions the kind of public notice, please get rid of the infestation of, what are they called?
Spinebacks, maybe?
Yes, spinebacks. Which, porcupines? Maybe.
I was thinking more like wild boars.
Yeah, that's more terrifying. Kinda. But Galena is like, hey, Viv, you want to go and kill a whole bunch of little animals that are killing a whole bunch of little animals?
Do you want to go on a basic World of Warcraft level 1 quest?
Yes. And this is the first that Mei Lee's hearing about it. And Viv at least says, hey, you want to come with? And she's like, absolutely not. The thing, though, is that Viv has been fearing that if she takes the time to go do this side quest, that she'll come back and the big bad will have descended upon the town, which is almost certainly foreshadowing. But Satchel actually pipes up and says, hey, I'd like to come along too. I can be of use. And Viv calls over to Fern. Did you hear that? But Fern was already asleep, and her gentle snores echoed by the griffet in her lap.
It's really cute.
Yeah, and that's where we leave off for now, and it is the last one next week, guys. So that means that all of the adventure stuff, all of the what we've seen coming, the foreshadowing, all of the danger and everything is gonna happen next time. So yeah, I think that was definitely the lull in the interest curve right before we know that it's gearing up. You can feel a little tension, but that's, I think, a sign of good writing.
It's the equivalent of take me out to the Holosuite right before the final stretch of episodes in the final season of Deep Space Nine.
Nerd.
Yeah, and?
I love you.
Love you too. With that, let's go ahead and talk notable quotables. It was your turn this week. What'd you pick?
It was. So there are a couple of them. Then she saw Fern's face, bright and laughing, as she passed a book into hands that probably needed it. Books can be such lovely solace. I've had a really hard time since my last surgery, actually just sitting down and reading. And I think I've said this before and I'll say it again, but this podcast has been a godsend because I at least get through one book every 14 weeks. I'm kind of sad about the fact that I can't just easily sit and read right now. Hopefully that'll fix itself soon. But I did find the other one, and you're going to have to say fork. Oh,
fork,
murmured Fern. And then she squeaked when she realized what she'd said. I mean, come in. Because she is so starstruck by Zelia. She's just like, Even though she was anticipating Celia showing up, I think she did the thing that I sometimes do again, where it's, yeah, sure, someone said that they were going to do this thing, but I don't believe that's true.
Yeah, I've seen that happen.
I hate it, but it's a defense mechanism. But anyway, those are my notable quotables.
All right, so now let's talk about what we learned this week.
Yeah, you sent me a poll on Discord earlier that was like cow or boat.
You chose boat. So we're going to talk about archaeologists finding a supersized medieval shipwreck in Denmark.
Denmark, we love you. You make some of the things that I love the most in my entire life, which are Lego, and you're where Hobby is, or Hobie, I don't know, yarn store that I buy a lot from. Please don't go away.
Anyway, back to ships.
Back to ships.
So recently, archaeologists discovered this shipwreck while surveying the seabed in preparation for a construction project outside of Copenhagen. And so what they found was a massive cog, which they've called Sveglet 2.
You're going to be butchering the crap out.
Svelget, actually. Svelget 2.
Okay, yeah. I if there's anyone who is Danish, please feel free to roast him.
Please. Or just gently correct me. That'll also work.
Sure.
But so they've called this wreck Svelget 2. They don't know the original name since it's pretty much lost to history. So it was a merchant ship called a cog, which is a wide, flat-bottomed, high-sided ship with an open cargo hold and a square sail on a single mast. It's basically a bigger, heavier, more advanced version of the Viking knarrs of centuries past. And so this thing was dated to about 1410 Common Era. So we're talking, it's right as Europe is just starting to get out of the Dark Ages. Late medieval, basically. And so this was effectively the equivalent of a high-tech supertanker of its day. It could carry bulky commodities from ports in the Netherlands, north around the coast of Denmark, and then south through the Øresund to trading ports in the Baltic Sea. But this one apparently didn't make it. Most cogs were about 15 to 25 meters long and about 5 to 8 meters wide, and capable of carrying about 200 tons of cargo. Svelget 2, however, was 28 from bow to stern, 9 meters wide, and could carry about 300 tons. So this was the largest one that they've found so far. And what's really fascinating about all of this is that this is a type of ship that only makes sense in the context of growing trade. So the merchant class was growing in both size and wealth in the early 1400s, and the cog was both a product of that growth and the engine driving it. The mere fact of its existence points to a society that could afford to invest in building big, expensive trading ships and could confidently expect a return on that investment. Physically, it's a product of the same trading networks that it supplied. So while the heavy timbers of its frame were cut locally in the Netherlands, the Pomeranian oak planks of the Svelget 2's hull came from Poland. So that means that this was coming from all over the place. And it meant that the network of trade allowed for goods that just weren't available locally to be available all over Europe. And it also kind of recontextualizes how we think of Vikings as not just marauders, but also as merchants. Like they were transporting stuff back and forth between Scandinavia and the rest of Europe. The other thing that's kind of cool is this is one of the earliest examples of a ship that has a stern castle. So the hold is open on this ship, but there is a shelter in the back where the crew could take solace during storms, where they could also had a galley set up back there with a brick fireplace area so they could actually make hot meals, which was a novelty for most seafarers at that time. And it was this idea that sailors were taking life on land with them instead of just living on salted beef and salted herring. Like they found in one case a sailor's skeleton and his belongings, which included a rosary and a comb. So he actually had some things that were just little personal effects that he took with him as opposed to just bare utilities. So it's just kind of interesting to see something that's a little bit different from our typical conceptions of what life would have been like. As far as the cargo itself, typically this would have been probably lumber or fabric or just stuff that as the ship went down would have floated up because this is an open hull and an open hold. So it ended up having been carried away by the current and washed up on beaches which have been a major windfall for any of the locals there. So it's kind of fascinating just how this one little wreck provides us with some insight into the distant past. So that's the thing I learned this week.
That's awesome.
Thanks.
Sounds suspiciously like an interesting fact, but
What's the thing I learned this week?
alrighty. Time for something to recommend, or recommended thing of the week. Whatever we want to say. Recommended thing of every couple of weeks. Please ignore the weird plane noises if you can hear them. Anyway, I'm going to be kind of short and sweet with this because I think that both of my recommendations are better if you go in blind. First, the show Paradise. I knew I liked the actors. I like Sterling K. Brown. I like Cyclops.
James Marsden.
James Marsden. I keep messing up him with Spike.
Oh, James Marsters.
Yes.
Understandable.
But just showing my age here.
It's Paxton and Pullman all over again.
Cyclops. Anyway, I didn't know anything about it when I started watching, other than Will said it was good. And so, you know what? If you don't know anything about it yet, don't look it up, just watch it. It's 8 episodes, it's not really that long. But other than episode 7, which I gotta say was stressful, I just found myself super intrigued following the twists and turns. Episode 7 is still very well done. It's just very stressful. Now, the other one that I knew almost nothing about was Pluribus.
So to give it to you, I would recommend if you're a fan of any of Vince Gilligan's stuff, so whether that's X-Files or Breaking Bad or Better Call Saul, this is one that will probably be right up your alley. It combines the weirdness that X-Files has, and I'm just going to say it's weird and leave it at that, and that sort of off-kilter sense of humor. It is uproariously funny at times. Like some of the sight gags in it are just brilliant. And then it also combines those elements in Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, where you have characters doing something and you don't know what they're doing. They don't tell you what they're doing. They just show you. And you kind of have to piece it together just by watching, because they're also piecing it together themselves. And it's really satisfying to watch that kind of puzzle solving happen in real life or in real time. And I would say Pluribus is a good companion to Severance if you're looking for something that is stylish, where cinematography and blocking matter. It is both stylish and stylistic, I would say. Though I would say that Pluribus is less stylized than Severance is. Like there are less bits of highly staged props and things like that. Everything looks like it takes place in our world. It doesn't have that weird liminal quality that a lot of Severance has.
Although there is a lot of uncanny valley.
A lot of uncanny stuff happens, certainly. But I'll leave it at that.
I know that one has been hyped to no end. I'd say that if you're on the fence about whether or not to get Apple TV, I would recommend it over Paramount, over, with the exception of a few things, like very small amount of things, over HBO, over Peacock for certain. Like, it has a lot of really good shows that I'm not sure get as much eyeballs or love as they should. But I thought about the things I've watched in the last few years, and a lot of them are actually on Apple TV. So For All Mankind, Silo, Severance, Pluribus, Ted Lasso.
We just started Foundation too.
What else? There's other things I know that we've watched.
Those are the ones that I'm thinking of right now.
That's fair, but you've watched other ones.
Yeah, I enjoyed Mythic Quest. Really, though, I think Apple TV really does big, thinky science fiction about as good as anybody out there. If you're looking for a big, thinky science fiction piece, that's a good spot.
So I know that wasn't my recommendation, but I'd say that there are a good number of things that are worth at least a couple months of subscription to them.
Oh, I know what we were thinking of. Monarch.
Oh, right. Monarch Legacy of Monsters. Yeah. Honestly, other than things like Paradise or Only Murders in the Building, I haven't really watched a whole lot of just shows. I mean, I watched The Pit and I've watched all the Game of Thrones things and all the Star Wars things, but it's really hard to pinpoint things that just stood out the same way.
That's fair. Well, with that, I'd like to thank you for potting with me.
Thank you for potting with me.
And thanks for listening to Tales from the Waystone. Join us next time as we continue the summer reading program series with chapters 37 through the end of Bookshops and Bonedust.
We would like to thank our friend Shawnee Jang for our theme music.
And many thanks to Travis Baldree for creating this universe that we're enjoying exploring.
And let us know if you would like to hear about our thoughts on brigands and bread knives. Audio production and editing, and a lot of memes posted on our Discord, courtesy of me, Phoenix McCullough.
And writing and project management, courtesy of me, Will McCullough.
If you'd like to help support us, consider becoming a patron on our Patreon page, though we'd much rather actually that you just join our Discord.
We're fun to talk to. We'll have a link in the show description.
As always. Anyway, with that, here's to one more day above the roses.
To one more day above the roses.
Ding!
Ding.
Hold on, I also need to zip up. You probably also do too. So that our voices actually go into the mic.
Welcome to the 6th installment of our series on Travis Baldree's Bookshops and Bonedust. Welcome to the 6th installment. I'm just like, fork it, I'm scrapping it. Welcome to the 6th installment of our series on Travis Baldree's Bookshops and Bonedust, Great Strides in Bookselling, where we'll be reading chapters 31 through 36.
That was a struggle.
It was. Oh, no!